Hey everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share with you guys a process video of how I created this really relatively simple card. This is a guest design team project for Scrapping for Less, and this is all made with the stamp set called At the Beach Sentiments by Scrapping for Less. And it's the add-on banana split part of the Scrapping for Less monthly kit, which for this theme for June was at the beach. So first what I did was I took a piece of cardstock the size of a normal A2 size card, and I'm just lightly with a pencil drawing a grid. And I just put it into my MISTI just because the ruler was right there, and I'm just making a grid so that I can repeatedly stamp the adorable little flip-flop stamps that are part of this stamp set. You ever look at some stamps and they're relatively simple, but they're just so stinking cute? And I wanted to just highlight these adorable stamp of flip-flops. And I turned the askew a little bit, just over to the upper left or pointed in that direction, and I decided to just space out the stamping of these adorable flip-flops kind of in an offset pattern. So for the row that's the first there, I decided to do two fully onto the card front, and then I decided to do a stamping right in the middle. And I'm not moving the stamp itself, I'm moving my card front just around on my MISTI. The MISTI tool really helps for this kind of repeated stamping, especially because I'm not the best stamper. So sometimes the stamping comes out a little bit light or whatever like that, and I can re-stamp this way without ruining the stamped image. And as you can see here, I am stamping the flip-flops kind of off of the cardstock as well. So it's essentially making kind of a pattern paper. It's not exact, but it really doesn't have to be. Once this is all colored up and I have the rest of the card design on, even if there are some imperfections in terms of my spacing or whatever, your eye really doesn't pick it up. I decided that this last stamp here, I couldn't leave it on my MISTI where I had it, so I'm just going to place it gently over onto that right section in the middle row there, and it actually worked out fine. But I had to move the stamp for that last stamping because my MISTI is like that regular size, not the huge one for scrapbooking. And now I'm just erasing my pencil lines. And now I'm just going to give you kind of a sense of how I am Copic coloring. For the entire background, I'm using an E50, but as you can see here, my Copic marker is running out of ink, so I actually have to, off camera, refill it, and I colored up just a base color of the entire background with that E50. Then I decided right around each of the flip-flops, I would do kind of a shadow, just to kind of make the flip-flops pop a little bit from that background. So I'm using a darker E53. And I thought this would be a nice kind of buff color background, kind of like the color of sand. I'm not really being too super careful about the coloring or blending, that is, because I know most of this is actually going to be covered up with a sheet of vellum because I want to have the majority of this card front kind of softened a little bit. Now I'm going through and blending that E53 out a little bit with an E51. Sorry, I forgot to put the pen cap there on the left, but I'm just blending out a little bit further from the shadow, the deepest shadows around each of the flip-flops. And again, I'm not so concerned about blending perfectly. I know I'm going to do a couple more layers of coloring with the E50 as well. So that was now the E51. This pen has a lot more ink in it, so it's much more juicy and it's coming out really well, and I'm able to blend out from that E53, the darkest area right around the flip-flops, to a little bit lighter with the E51. And now my E50 that I have refilled off camera has a little bit more ink. You need, once you fill in a marker, you need to allow the pressure in the marker to equalize. So I was letting that E50 marker kind of equalize in pressure. Now for the flip-flops, I decided I'm going to make them all the same. I could have made these like a rainbow color or whatever, but I decided to keep this card more, not quite monochromatic, but in the same warm family tone. So all the bottoms of the flip-flops have a yellow, and I'm using a pale, pale yellow, Y00, and then putting a little bit of shadow right around the straps of the flip-flops with a Y11, and then I'm going to color in all of the flowers and the straps of the flip-flops with an R20. And then I'm going to add a little bit of shadow to the center of all of the flowers, as well as to the kind of junction points, or where the flip-flops kind of go down toward where they attach to the shoe base, and also where the straps kind of curve around and join again at the base of each of the flip-flops. So I add a little bit of R22 for a little more color, and then to get a real dark coral look, I'm using an R35. And I think blending back out again with the R22 after adding the R35 really helps blend those areas together and helps give the straps of the flip-flops a little bit of a shiny look and a more blended look. And I didn't show all of the flip-flops, but I wanted to show you guys that quick process a couple more times. So I'm coloring up the flip-flops at the bottom here the same way as I did that center pair. I'm starting off with the straps and the flowers with a base of that really pale R12. And then I'm going to add a little bit more of an intense color with an R22. Again, just going for the areas that I thought would be shadowed. And I think even with small little images like this, adding that variation of color and tone from the lightest to the darkest really helps make these images look more three-dimensional. If you stopped right there, it would be okay, but adding that just a teeny hint of that darkest R35 really helps make these images pop a lot more, I think. So, you know, even with small images, sometimes I go for two-color blending, but if you can, especially for the kind of highlight color or the most dominant color, I think it's helpful to go ahead and go for that three-color blending. Now for the sentiment, I'm taking just a plain piece of black cardstock. I've prepped it with my EK powder tool, and then I'm going to be heat embossing using Versamark ink the sentiment, "Let's head to the beach." I'm doing it a couple of times. I'm using Versamark ink there, and I'm taking it off and over a coffee filter to catch my excess powder. I am putting on super fine Ranger embossing powder, and I'm taking a dry paintbrush and just getting off the excess little flecks of powder that I don't want heat embossed. And then I'm heating it with my heat tool on the front as well as on the back. And I love watching heat embossing melt like that. It just comes alive. I think it's like magic. It's so fun. I'm again prepping this little strip again over to the right. I wanted to stamp out the sentiment twice so that it goes all the way across the card front. And again, I'm brushing off the excess powder away from the sentiment. And then again, I'm going to be heat embossing the front and the back. And if you guys don't know, heating the front and the back really helps prevent warping, or if it does warp in one direction, it's really great to heat it on the other side and it will kind of curl back. So you get a flatter kind of heat embossing. And now I'm just taking my time to cut off the excess there so that the strip can go all the way across. I'm going to put it up about a third of the way up, following the rule of thirds. And I am attaching it not only to the vellum there, but also behind the vellum. And that helps hide the glue so that it doesn't show through the vellum. And that secures it pretty well onto the card front. But the vellum is loose at the top and the bottom. So I decide I'm going to add some sequins. These sequins are so great. They match perfectly, actually. It's from the third collection in the Scrapping for Less June card kit. And I'm actually layering some sequins. I'm using some yellow and then some smaller orange ones. And I'm just tacking down the vellum with a little tiny dot of the glossy accents and then adding over top the sequins. So I like this layered look, so I'm going to repeat it here with a bigger yellow sequin and then a smaller kind of corally one. And then I remembered that the kit also had some enamel dots. These enamel dots are from Cartabella. And again, I thought they matched perfectly. So I could hide another little dot of glue there. And then I thought in the middle of the sentiment, there was just enough space to put in kind of a medium-sized enamel dot. I really like how it adds more interest and a little bit of sparkle and dimension to this otherwise relatively simple card. I'm also adding some white or more clear sequins, and I think that helps keep it a little bit less busy, but still gives me space to, or areas to tack down that vellum. So I'm doing it on the edges there. So that one has a white sequin and then an orange one. I'm skipping over some of the other sequins so that I can share with you guys how I finish off the inside of the card. I'm using another sentiment from the stamp set that says sandy toes, take away the woes. And I'm stamping out another set of flip-flops there. I thought that would be a nice way to finish off the inside of the card, which I like to try to do. I know a lot of us spend so much time on the outside of cards, and then we leave the insides relatively blank. And I just thought because this stamp set had such great sentiments, I would go ahead and finish off the inside with this. I'm using a scrap of yellow cardstock in my stash. And then I decide I'm going to just add a little bit of color. I'm going to color up the flip-flops exactly the same way as I did on the front, except that I don't have to color in the yellow at all because the cardstock that I use for the inside liner is already yellow. So I'm just using the 3 red colors, the lightest, the mid-tone, and the darkest to color up the straps of the flip-flops as well as the flowers. Really simple, easy Copic coloring, but I think adding that little hint of color to the inside of the card is a fun way to keep the card looking cohesive on the inside as it is on the outside. And that's really it. I hope you've enjoyed this process video. If you're interested in the Scrapping for Less June card kit, there's so many great stamps and papers and embellishments and die set even. It is back in stock, I believe now, and for a while it was sold out. So go check out Scrapping for Less. I hope you guys are having a wonderful summer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.